Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for a Seattle 2030 District 101. So the things that we're going to be going through today are the global need for 2030 districts. What is the Seattle 2030 District? Why a district model works? What are the goals? What are the baselines? Who are the members? And then how we work and what the commitment is, the benefits, and the current programs that we're working on. So with that, let's get started. So for the first time ever, the majority of the world's population lives in cities. We're rapidly urbanizing across the globe, and we live, work, and play in these cities. And Seattle is actually one of the fastest growing cities in the US. And globally, over the next 16 years, it's expected that 1.6 billion people will move into cities, which is rapid urbanization that we're seeing right now. And to accommodate those people, about 9 billion square feet of buildings will need to be built or renovated globally over the next 15 years. So what does that look like? Well, the US is about 275 billion square feet. So over the next 15 years, we're talking about building and renovating about 3.5 times the current building stock of the US. So this represents a huge opportunity as well as an urgent need for us to get this right. We need a transformation of the building sector to address climate and economic issues that arise with this much urbanization. So in order to do that, we need to have sustainable and carbon neutral urbanization. And that's where the Seattle 2030 District kicks in. The 2030 District is committed to transforming our city by significantly reducing the environmental impacts of buildings by the year 2030. And we're doing this because without transformative change in the buildings where we live and work, we're going to lose the climate battle in the Pacific Northwest. And we believe that the Seattle 2030 District has the unique ability to connect and convene decision makers who can influence corporate culture and help to create the policies that will help us solve this climate crisis. So why does a district model work better rather than a building by building model that we've been using for probably the past 25 years? Well, this provides a great opportunity for shared metrics and targets. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But it also brings great opportunities for efficiencies at scale, like sharing energy or heat, or even water as well. And it also creates a sense of place. People really start to understand how buildings and how they work affect the place that they live and work. So the 2030 District is a private-public partnership. So it's private sector led and public sector supported. And that's important. So we're a voluntary program. We're not mandated by the city, the county, or the state. And we have building owners actively participate because it makes good business sense for them. The shared mission and goals is also kind of important to both the building owners and the city. Like the city, as you probably all know, has a pretty aggressive climate action plan. And a lot of building owners and companies are starting to put these goals in their plans as well. So the reality really now shows that any improvements that are made in buildings make good economic sense. So I mentioned there the private-public partnership, and the main reason really that we're private sector led is because we've seen public sector programs lag it or even fail when there's a change in administration. You might have a very progressive policy that's written into a plan that's meant to take place over a 10-year period, but that administration might turn over in 4 years, and then that plan might get rewritten or even scrapped. And we have seen this happen even here in Seattle numerous times, and it can even happen with building codes. And when that happens, it's really hard for the private sector to work towards a goal if we keep moving the goalposts. So what the Seattle 2030 district allows is for private industry to set the initiatives and what that looks like over the next several years, and then have the public sector support those goals with their policies. So that shared mission and goal is really important when trying to make this kind of change on a large scale. So if you don't set a goal, you're never going to achieve it. This kind of gets back to that age-old saying of you can't manage what you don't measure. So the time frame now, the year 2030 is really not that far away, only 10 years, but we still feel that those goals are achievable. And we'll be around in that period of time, right? The 10 years is not that far away. There's a high possibility that you might even own an asset for that period of time. And we know that globally now, we need to achieve carbon neutral buildings and high performing buildings by the year 2030, according to climate scientists, in order for us to achieve the Paris climate goals. And we also know that it makes great economic sense to work and to work towards these goals and achieve them. So what are those goals? I've talked a lot about them today. So the goal of the 2030 district is to achieve a 50% reduction in energy, water, and transportation emissions by the year 2030, with interim goals leading up to that. And you'll see here on this slide that we're working towards a 20% reduction that all of our member buildings should be achieving now. And then that goes up to a 35% reduction in 2025, ultimately getting us to that 50% reduction in the year 2030. And for new construction and major renovations, that goal is a little bit different. The goal is to get to carbon neutral buildings by the year 2030. So the current goal is an 80% reduction in energy from the baseline. And I'll talk a little bit about the baseline in a few slides. But just as a comparison, that's around about 25% better than our current energy code here in Seattle. So I've mentioned now the shared mission of the district. And really, I think this is the reason why a lot of building owners really like the district model. The goal is a district goal, district-wide. So it's not an individual building goal like you would have with some of these other certifications that are out there right now. So what you as a building owner are really doing is committing to achieving those goals. So you might be able to go above 50%. If you're a newer building, you might be able to work towards that 70 or 80%. But as an older building, you might only be able to achieve a 30% reduction. But on average, as a district, we're going to achieve that 50% reduction goal. And that then puts us on that path to climate stabilization. So how does each building individually there help meet the goals? I kind of just talked about that a little bit, but how do we do that as a district? So what we try and do is talk to buildings and their owners and really help them understand the process in which we evaluate their buildings. And then we try and help them set targets and deliver on those savings to help them improve their asset performance over time. And we do that by First, comparing their buildings to similar buildings. So if you have a large commercial office that's 500,000 square feet, then we'll compare that anonymously to other buildings that are a similar size and use type. So once we've done that, we'll try and set a target that's aligned with our performance goals over that period of time. So now 10 years. So although our goals are aggregated, we do want to look at that performance on an individual building level to help that owner set the time frame that's appropriate for them to achieve those goals and align it with their capital expenditure. So they're not just kind of doing one massive upgrade that's going to be very costly. You might be able to kind of spread that out over a 10-year period. And like I said, we're a performance-based organization, and we want to make sure that we're accurate in our comparisons. So we like to look at an apples to apples methodology, and that compares a building's size, use type, and operating hours, like the example that I just gave you. So the baselines, I talked a little bit about our goals and kind of compared to baselines, and this is pretty important just because there's a lot of people that can get a little bit scared by a 50% reduction in energy use, or even 80% if you're doing a major renovation. So it's important to note here that our energy baselines are based on our 2003 CBEX data that was previously provided by Portfolio Manager and Energy Star through the EPA, but is now done through the Zero tool by Architecture 2030. So if you have your building data in Portfolio Manager, then we put all of that information into Zero tool and it spits out a baseline for us. And it will do that for all of our members as well as the whole district. For water, it's a little bit different. There's no national baseline for water. So we had to set a baseline based on the average water use in Seattle from the year 2000 to the year 2010. And we collected water use from different building types and then aggregated that data with the square footage that we had. So we got the aggregated water use from SPU, and then we used the square footage data that was available through the King County data that is available to us. And that allowed us to create a water usage index, a WUI, that we have now for each building type in Seattle. So office, multifamily, retail, hospitals, etc. And then we did a similar thing for our stormwater baseline as well. So we aggregated the rainfall on an annual basis in a similar time frame. And then we compare that with aggregated building square footage for the district, and that gave us our stormwater baseline. So by looking at your building square footage, we have a handy rainwater stormwater calculator for this. You can put in your building square footage and it will spit out a stormwater baseline based on the annual rainfall that falls on that site. And then lastly, transportation is probably a newer issue for building owners, but there's a lot of great opportunity here to reduce carbon emissions, and kind of one of the kind of larger problem areas in Seattle is probably carbon emissions from transportation. But we really focus specifically on commuter transit. So what we do is look at mode split surveys, whether that comes from a transportation management plan survey or a commuter production survey, which you might be required by city or state regulations. And that really looks at how people are getting to and from the office. So we take that data and we assign a distance and a carbon metric to each mode of transportation to understand how much carbon each commuter is using over the course of the year. And then by using that information, we try and shift people towards low or no carbon transportation options, such as taking public transit or getting more people to bike or walk to work. So we currently have around about 260 buildings committed to the goal, and that makes up almost 60 million square feet of the district. And you can see from this map then that the district is pretty much located in the downtown core of Seattle and the surrounding neighborhoods. So there aren't any really kind of landmarks on this map, but where we pretty much go from the Starbucks Center in Sodo up to Lake Union. Hopefully you all know Lake Union. And then we go across from the waterfront up to Capitol Hill and First Hill. And you'll see this kind of corner. And the waterfront is the Olympic Sculpture Park. So we include then the Space Needle and all of that stuff. Heading up to Capitol Hill, where we have an MOU with the Capitol Hill Eco District. So we encompass quite a large area there in Capitol Hill as well. And we're a community of leaders in the Seattle 2030 district. So we currently have around about 49 developers, owners, and managers, 45 professional stakeholders, and that pretty much consists of the architects, industry, engineers, general contractors, folks who are kind of generally doing the work in the buildings. And then we have 19 community stakeholders, which are other nonprofits working towards similar goals. It also includes the city and the county. And then we have our 10 strategic partners, which are, again, mostly nonprofits, but folks that are working towards similar goals. So we don't need to recreate things. And I mentioned the Capitol Hill Eco District as one. So they're already doing great work in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. So we help them with their energy, water, and transportation metrics. And they're kind of our boots on the ground to bring in new members. And then another example of a strategic partner would be Commute Seattle, an organization that is already doing great work around transportation and helping building owners reduce carbon emissions by providing strategic information on reducing single occupancy vehicle rates. So when we as a district were formed, there was no point in us creating those same programs when there's already an organization doing that great work. So we partner with them a lot to provide that information. So this slide really looks at how, as a 2030 district, we work. So first of all, we convene business leaders and government officials to try and really create policies and incentives that work for both parties in order to achieve the 2030 district goals. We provide education sessions, such as this one, to our property owners and managers on the new strategies that are out there to achieve the goals. Most recently, we've been concentrating on how to reopen buildings with occupant health in mind while also kind of improving your efficiency. So this is a good opportunity to try and do both of those things. We provide demonstration projects with new technologies to our members. And we really just try and bring new products to market quicker there that can improve the efficiency of your building. We facilitate conversations amongst building owners to share information. I think I've mentioned this, that one thing members agreed on when the district was first founded was that building owners really, they compete on everything to do with their buildings, but they didn't need to compete on climate change. So we try and provide a space for them to share that knowledge and help each other out. And lastly, we celebrate our members and their achievements. Um, so we do this in a number of ways. We provide case studies that showcase the great work that we're doing, or they are doing even. And we also do this through our annual Vision Awards, where we give 4 awards to members who've showcased exemplary buildings in energy, water, transportation, and overall leadership. So this year, the Vision Awards is going to be reimagined into a virtual event, and that will be held on October 15th. And hopefully you'll be receiving an invite to that in the next couple of weeks. So what are we asking from our members? So we have different commitments for each membership type. This is kind of going through what we're asking from our property owners, managers, and developers. So like I've said, it's an aggregated goal. So we're not asking for individual building owners to meet any performance targets at any one time, but what we are asking for is information. So when a building owner joins, we ask them to share their energy, water, and transportation data voluntarily and also privately. And that way we're able to learn from best practices. So we also want to know what's not working from you. What are your struggles, and how can we break down barriers in the market to help you achieve some of these? So what are the member benefits for a building owner? So a lot of our benefits really come from the networking, training, and education that we provide to our building owners. And I've talked a little bit about that already. The next one is kind of the technical assistance. There's a lot of information out there at the moment on different products, how to achieve these goals, different incentives. And what we try and do is provide that technical assistance and make your jobs a little bit easier. So there's so much information that we realize you don't necessarily have the time to research a lot of this. And with one fairly easy phone call to us, we can usually help guide that conversation and improve the efficiency of getting that into your hands to allow you to make the best decisions possible for your buildings. I've mentioned the public policy and advocacy. This is something that we've really worked on over the last several years, realizing that we have pretty aggressive goals for the 2030 district. And we really need to create a market that is kind of advantageous for you to achieve those goals. So we work a lot with the city and the county to create these policies and incentives that will help you and incentivize you to achieve our goals. And then I mentioned recognition. If you're doing great work, then we want to recognize that and showcase it to other building owners so that they realize that this is possible. And we do that through the case studies. And then if you're a really exemplary building, then we showcase you through the Vision Awards as well. For professional stakeholders, the member commitments are a little bit different. As professionals, you agree to support the district performance goals by sharing your professional expertise and experience with the district. So I mentioned in the previous slides the technical assistance that we provide to building owners. A lot of that is me picking up the phone to you as professional stakeholders and just trying to get your insight and information so I can pass that on to building owners. And then kind of supporting the 2030 district staff. So like I said, if I have a question, it would be great if you just are available to have a meeting and just provide some of that support to our building owners. The benefits for you there is that opportunity to present that information to the property owners and developers. I try not to take too much credit for the information that is given to me by you as professional stakeholders. I always try and kind of say who the information has come from, so it provides a little bit of a business opportunity for you. Again, then you're being connected with those market leaders to be able to share that information, and you know that those market leaders are committed to the goals, so it's a little bit of an easier sell to push them a little bit further. You're also able to bring the cutting edge of building performance to your customers. So again, you know that these people are committed to the goals, they're open to some of these newer technologies that are going to push the industry forward on building efficiency. And that recognition, again, is the same if you're doing great work and a building has achieved those great goals, then you're going to be showcased in that case study as the organization or the company that did the work to help them achieve those goals. And the same there for the Vision Awards. And then lastly, we have our community stakeholders. Similar to the professional stakeholders, they're really agreeing to share their organizational expertise and experience in the areas of their core mission. I talked about Commute Seattle. They're a great partner of ours in sharing that information, and we do a lot of work to try and connect them to our building owners to help us kind of achieve our mutual goals of reducing carbon emissions from transportation. And then also they get to participate in some of that decision making. So when we're working with the city and county on any policies and incentives that involve their core areas, then we'll bring them into that conversation to make sure that it's the most robust conversation possible. And then these community stakeholders usually know a lot more about these topics than we as the district do. So we try and bring them in for education and training sessions. We have an education session set with Commute Seattle for the end of July. That is going to be about kind of what transportation looks like when we're all starting to go back into the workplace, kind of during COVID or post-COVID. The benefits for them as an organization, it gets to extend their organization's outreach. So we might have members that didn't necessarily know about them, and we can share that information in a wider spectrum. Again, they get to connect with building owners, managers, and market leaders that they know are committed to some of these goals. So it's a little bit easier to try and work with them. The public policy and advocacy, like I said, bringing them to the table so that they can help inform those decisions to create those incentives that help our members achieve the goals. And again, the opportunity to present to property owners and developers in those education forums. So I want to take a little bit to talk about the programs that we offer as the district. That, like I said, there's a lot of information out there. And a lot of the work that we try and do is connect our building owners to the information that is already existing. But there are some times where there isn't a current program. So we as a district try and kind of fill that gap. And one of those things that we're working on at the moment is waste heat recovery, working with King County to try and make it easier for our members to tap into sewage pipes and utilize the wasted heat that comes from that, provide kind of a carbon neutral heating and cooling source for them. That contract is currently in front of King County Council. So if you are interested in that, please let me know. We'd love to have your support there to push that contract forward. Smart buildings is another area that we have worked in the past. We had a smart buildings program probably back in 2014 that really worked on 5 building pilot projects to showcase the energy savings that you could get from continuous recommissioning. I think we did great work in that pilot. I think we brought a lot of market technologies to market quicker. You see a lot of ESCOs now offering smart building programs or platforms, and a lot of that is down to some of the work that we did in that pilot. I think there's still a lot more work that could be done in this area, particularly now as kind of buildings are running empty. There's opportunity for building engineers to be able to run a building through smart buildings from home, like some of us are kind of lucky enough to do. We have a small commercial program that aims to help buildings that are under 100,000 square feet. Some of these buildings often don't have anyone looking at sustainability or just energy efficiency measures. They're really just concentrating on keeping the lights on and keeping everything working. They don't necessarily have time to look at these programs and incentives. So we try and provide a program where we just walk them through what energy efficiency upgrades are possible and how to access some of the incentives. Which brings me to my last one. We've done a lot of work with Seattle City Light recently to bring improved incentives to building owners. 2 of those programs are the Pay for Performance program and Energy Efficiency as a Service. Pay for Performance is currently a full program available to everyone, gives you kind of a 3 to 5 year contract and does exactly what it says. The more you save, the more incentive you're going to get. And then Energy Efficiency as a Service, currently a pilot program on a longer contract period of 20 years, but aims to get rid of that split incentive issue by giving you, the building owner, the incentive back. So if you want more information about either of those things, please let me know, and I can connect you with the right people in Seattle City Light. For water, we did just release our rainwater reuse calculator that aims to showcase how you as a building owner could utilize the rain that is currently falling on your property and use it for anything from reusing cooling towers or toilet flushing and irrigation. I think I mentioned our stormwater calculator, which helps you kind of give a baseline for stormwater and then the strategies that you can use to reduce the amount of stormwater that gets released into the systems. We also have recently been working on a water efficiency transaction incentive, similar to energy efficiency as a service. For energy, it does the same thing for water and tries to give more of an incentive for you to put in grey water and rainwater harvesting systems in your building. And then lastly, we have a stormwater map that is on our website. And what this does is really just provide the story behind why stormwater is an important issue in Seattle, what its effects are on the Puget Sound and surrounding water bodies, and how you as building owners might be able to improve that. Has quite a few case studies on there of some of the great work that our members have been doing. And then for transportation, we have our Electrify Seattle program, which is really moving to electrify our transportation systems, whether that is individual cars and improving the charging infrastructure in downtown Seattle, or trying to bring more electric buses into the public transportation King County bus fleet. We try and provide some transportation incentives related to some of those. So the Orca Passport is probably the best example of this. That again, working with Commute Seattle, you can provide your employees with Orca passes, so they're more encouraged to take public transit to work. We did some great work with King County on sustainability around transit-oriented development sites. There's obviously a lot going on with light rail stations that were passed with SD3, and there's going to be a lot of development in those areas around those transit sites. And we really want to ensure that that development is done sustainably and kind of pushes the goals, because these buildings are obviously going to be there for a long time. So we need to make sure that they're performing well now. And then public policy and advocacy. Like I said, this is something we've been trying to work on for a few years now. I think the biggest example that we probably have for this is the update to the Living Building pilot program, which passed in 2018. And we were able to work with our building owners and developers to find out why the original program wasn't working so well and what needed to improve. What that basically came down to in its simplest form was the incentive, the density bonus needed to be increased to really make it worthwhile. So we worked with the city to create that program and increase the density bonus from 10 or 20 feet to an actual 1 or 2 stories in a building. And then also took the FAR bonus from 10% to 25%. And since we've done that, I think we've gone from maybe 2 or 3 buildings that were going through the pilot. I think now 16 spots are filled out of potential 25 projects. So really made a big difference in how that was working. And then at the same time we created that, we had a lot of our members kind of saying the Living Building pilot is great for new construction, but it doesn't really work for existing buildings and encourage major renovations. So we took that information to the city and worked on creating the 2030 Challenge pilot program, where if you do a major renovation and achieve what's essentially the 2030 district goals, then you get that same density bonus on top of your building. So really trying to encourage getting over the hump of a major renovation and what a substantial alteration means in a building. We also were a big advocate for energy efficiency as a service, which I already talked about a little bit. I'd say the last important one here is that we try and act as a representative to members when the city or the county are trying to create policies around building efficiency. So again, we recognize that our building members' time is somewhat limited. They don't necessarily have the time to be sitting down with city and county officials on a regular basis to help craft these policies. So we try and be their seat at the table to advocate for the best outcomes there. And then the last thing I'd like to mention is that our 2020 progress report was recently released. You can find this on our website. It provides a lot of great information around what has happened in the last few years. It's been a while since we've done this, so it showcases a lot of the programs that I've talked about today in more detail, and the work that we've done in that 4 years, how our members are currently performing, and then kind of a look towards the future and what we see as kind of major things that are probably coming down the line that we're going to be working on with our members in the next few years. And lastly, I'd like to thank our annual sponsors and our funders. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of the work that we're doing right now, particularly during this time in the pandemic. We really do rely on the funding that these people provide to us, and are very grateful for the work that they do to continue to push environmental work. So Boeing, the Bullitt Foundation, and King County are all supporting our programs at the moment, and I'd really like to extend my deepest thanks to them. Uh, and with that, I'll end it. I'll end the recording there. Thank you very much for attending today, and I hope to see you all at the next education session in July.